everyone, thanks for joining us on the Arise special. My name is Ngozi Alebu. Like I told you, my guest is Babatunde Raji Fashola, the Minister for Works and Housing. Thank you so much for joining us on the Arise special, Honorable Minister. This will be the second time we'll be having a chat, and I wonder what has changed since the last time we discussed. But let me start with the recent, seemingly controversial statements coming from you. First off, you faulted the federal government's assets concessioning and sale and privatization and all of that. You want to tell us exactly why? Is it not an indictment on the concessioning process by the federal government? What do you have against it?
Why are you looking for a controversy when there is none? And really and truly, I think that the purpose of that intervention was to first halt the seemingly racing thought that every problem can be solved by the private sector. So I've heard it when I was governor. Once anything is not working, give it to the private sector. PPP, PPP. So my intervention was to say to people that the private sector PPPs are not a silver bullet for every problem that relates to infrastructure development. They're a welcome partnership, but they are not the silver bullet alone on itself. And that's what I was trying to explain. That if you look at you can't do PPPs without a knowledge of the global, continental, regional, and the national economy. So what's happening on the global stage today? Everybody is borrowing money. So who is the investor that you are looking for?
That's a good question.
So also, the biggest development financing institutions have come from only one place in the last decade, China. China is slowing down. And if we're asking one individual to go and build a 200-kilometer road that will cost about 200 billion naira in our national economy, and we're giving him a concession of 20, 30, 40 years, is there anybody, any banking institution in Nigeria that has provided 25-year finance? And so perhaps, as I argued before the parliament, we should understand that some assets are easier to deal with by private sector than others. Roads, a little more challenging than buildings. Rail, perhaps even more so if you are talking of the tracks. Those tracks made of steel last for 100 years. So where is 100-year money? Who has that kind of money to tie down? But if you build the tracks, perhaps, just I see you want to intervene. Yeah. If you build the tracks, you might get somebody to bring investment to run the trains. So, and I then said that the public must understand that a lot of Nigeria's economy has been privatized. Power, ports, airports, seaports, telecoms, and if services are not where they are expected to be, perhaps there's a time to say, hey, what was the purpose of doing this in the first place?
Exactly. Are you saying concessioning, privatization have failed?
I haven't said any such thing. Okay. I'm saying that if you are on a journey, right, there's a time when you assess how far you have traveled. There's a time when you also assess how well you have traveled. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
And I'm saying to the Nigerian public, and I repeat myself, I have nothing against privatization. So let me be very clear about that. I have nothing against concessioning. I'm saying look at the people who profess to be able to do A or B. Have they done it somewhere else before? Look at also the market. Do you need guarantees to support them? Will it take a longer time than your government can afford? And nobody should be fooled by the notion that there is some do-gooder out there who is a PPP and comes with a magic wand. There's no such thing. Those are the things I'm saying.
So in the event that Nigeria carries out an appraisal of how far it's come with privatization or concessioning, and the answer is it hasn't really delivered on the promise, what then would be the alternative?
No,
What would you be preferring?
It would be a continuing evaluation. You see, okay, I did a survey, you see, and that's why we needed to have some people who understand concessioning. Otherwise, we will not be speaking on the same wavelength. I did a survey across the UK, Malaysia, India, South Africa, and what we found out was that the highest PPP percentage of investment in infrastructure in places like Malaysia and India was about 33%. The rest was government funding, over 60%. In the UK, I think it was about 70 something. The rest was about 30%. In South Africa, it was about 6% PPP to 94% government spend. So the point I am making is that PPPs are no silver bullets. They complement what government does.
But at the end of the day, government still takes responsibility for a larger chunk. Is that what you're saying?
We are going just to the point that if you look at the type of assets that we're talking about, you will see that they are largely social assets. So that takes me to the point really, which is that some assets are social assets that only government can fund.
Like?
Rail, the tracks. Private sector will probably take a shot at the coaches, which is called the rolling stock. An airport, the runway and the control tower. Government. You can leave the terminal building for private sector. What is in a terminal building? The shelves and the cubicles for immigration and all of those type of things. And then the large warehouse shopping mall. That's where private sector does business. Daily cash. So if you see that, you will see that it's more government, and that is why government's role is enabling. Build the social infrastructure, private sector will do business.
Great, and I'm glad you just talked about the need for government to provide the enabling environment for the private sector or this PPP to work. Let's talk about the key infrastructure that's, you've been handling for about 6 years now, works and housing. Of course, power was part of it until it was offloaded, thankfully, I guess. But let's look at 200,000 kilometers network of roads in Nigeria, about 35,000 under the purview of the federal government. I gather that you've been able to fix about 13,000 kilometers of federal roads, if I'm correct. Of course, I stand to be corrected. How far have you gone in terms of delivering the right kind of road infrastructure that Nigerians yearn for in the last 6 years?
Let me tell you where we are. When I took office in 2016, I met with many people across sectors, taking a measure of where things were. There was a report by the Department for International Development, DFID, under partnership and grants in aid to the Nigerian government, under a program called RAMS, Road Asset Management Systems. And I recall very clearly that one of the things they reported to me then was that their survey of Nigerian road network showed at that time that there was about 51, 52 odd percent. I can't remember it was over 50% of Nigeria's road that was in decent and motorable condition.
50%?
51, 52, 53, 54, I can't remember exactly, at that time in 2016. And that 42, 48%, depending on the actual number. So we're in different stages of need. Some really very bad, some not so bad, some critical, some not so critical, some needing of reconstruction, some needing rehabilitation. That's the context when I took over. So from that time to now, with the road infrastructure tax credit policy of the president, the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund of the president, the Sukuk program and everything, we have gone at road infrastructure with tongs and hammers, if you like, in a manner of speaking. So what we have now is 854 contracts, and follow me carefully,
yes.
Contracts in 795 projects.
Okay.
Over 13,000 kilometers of roads and bridges at different stages of execution. Some already completed, some nearing completion, some in the middle, some just starting. So that's the picture. So when I talk about contracts, let me give you an example. So on a road like the Lagos-Ibadan, it's a 127 kilometer road. It has 2 contracts. One from Shagamu to Ibadan by RCC. One from Lagos to Shagamu by JB. So those are 2 contracts and 1 project.
Yes.
So on Benin to Lokoja, you have about 200 plus kilometers. You have RCC, you have Dantata and Sawu, you have Mother Cart, you have CGC. So those are 4 contracts on 1 project. Because our roads are long, so we share the burden amongst contractors often.
Is it because one contractor cannot deliver on time, deliver the quality that you
it is often the case. This is really global best practice across the world. Usually all of the things that you need to check in single failure, point of failure risks, sometimes also the lack of capacity of one contractor working in different states to mobilize enough resources over 200 kilometers to serve you appropriately. So you share the risk and spread the wealth, because part of the reason why you are doing infrastructure anyway is to distribute wealth. So
fair enough.
And over the long term. So that's where we are. As I said, some of those projects have been completed. Vanekea to Budu Road has been completed. Parts of substantial parts of Kano Maiduguri, almost 500 kilometers has been completed out of over 600 kilometers. The last part is the Damaturu to Maiduguri part. We finished the Ikon Bridge, we finished the bridge to Cameroon, Bamenda to Umfung. We finished parts about 300 kilometers of Sokoto to Kontangura has been finished. We finished some other roads. I can't remember all of them.
Yes, of course. I mean, that's understandable. So, but do you get a sense that the more of these jobs that you complete, or even the ones that are still, that are yet to be completed, do you get a sense that it feels like it's still a long way, from actually reaching your goal? Because you have this protest here and there across the country, well, in parts of the country. Ogun State, for example, Nupeng, the natural, the Union of Petroleum Gas, truckers, threatened to go on strike.
You want me to speak to that?
Yes, I would like you to speak to that.
And
what exactly?
One thing I've learned,
yes.
This is nation building. Nation building is a long journey. And so you do your part, and when you're done, you exceed. I sympathize with commuters in places like Lagos, Ota, to Abeokuta, and those other gridlock areas. But one by one, Ado-Ekiti, Akure, for example, Cham, Numan, Calabar, Itu, those are the few gridlock areas left that we need to solve these problems. I sympathize with them. But truth be told, you know what? Calabar A2, for example, we just found a solution today, so we have 172 billion assured now. Oyo Ogbomosho will be solved now. Most of the roads in Niger will be solved because we have a tax credit scheme that is injecting about 623 billion from NNPC across its strategic petroleum haulage routes. But you know, that said, and so we'll solve it. The point is that protesting, blocking the road doesn't build the road. The real problem is money. If anybody knows where we can get more money, we're ready to build.
Parts of the Lagos-Ibadan road now seem abandoned.
No.
Is it
There's no part of Lagos-Ibadan. So let's get it. Let me lead you through it. So in that axis, Lagos-Ibadan, no road. Lagos-Ota-Abeokuta, no road. Ota-Abeokuta to Ibadan, no road. But you know what we've done? We have solved Lagos-Ibadan. You can go in the morning and come back from Ibadan to Lagos today. You couldn't try it before Buhari. Abeokuta to Ibadan through Oshiele, almost finished. Now, Lagos-Ota to Abeokuta, there was even no contractor. A contractor is on site as you and I speak, working. That's progress. We've moved it forward. The needle has moved. So, and this is true of all of those places where we intervene. As I told you, it's when things start getting done that the noise levels rise up. And you know what I think? You know what I think about the noise levels? You know, I like them. You know, they are a vote of confidence in our ability. When are you going to do it? That means you're asking us. You believe we can.
And that's a question I'd actually like to ask you. How soon these roads that are yet to be finished, the Ota one that you mentioned, and in the southeast too, and south.
Okay, let me give you the juice about
They have a sense of being left behind.
Who?
They're saying in the southeast and south that their roads.
Southeast is getting second Niger bridge that they have dreamt of and clamored for decades. It has only been electoral promise after which nothing happens. The bridge is almost completed. We will finish it in 2022. So that's
what about the East-West Road?
Wait a minute, that's over 200 billion naira worth of investment. And Enugu Onitsha, I mean, I didn't say that. Before we came into office, people who use the road said you have to pass through the bush to even traverse between Enugu and Onitsha. You can drive the road and it's almost finished. There's progress. If you go there, you will see it. So nobody has been left behind. There is no state in Nigeria where the Buhari infrastructure is not impacting, whether it is road, whether it is a bridge, whether it's a housing project, or a combination of all the three. Everybody is getting something. People are entitled to ask for more. They're entitled to ask for more, but they can't make that argument now that, oh, we are being neglected. It's not a sustainable argument on any basis at all. My
guest is the Honorable Minister for Works and Housing, Babatunde Raji Fashola. We've been talking about roads. Roads, as you know, is very, very important to Nigerians, and of course, housing. We'll get to that.
They're important in every economy.
Definitely, definitely. But let me raise a point that you made. I don't know if it was a threat or a warning or an advice to the state governments that they should not carry on with fixing federal roads, because you know what? They're not going to be getting any refunds. And then there's this funding gap that you have with fixing the roads across the country. Why are you discouraging the state governments or governors from fixing federal roads?
Okay, so let me try and answer you as quickly as I can. It wasn't a warning, it wasn't a threat. I was executing the mandate of the Federal Executive Council, chaired by the President of the Federal Republic. So what's the context? The context is that between 1999 and 2015, right, federal roads had been essentially unattended to, at least not with the commitment that they clearly needed. So we've talked about some of them, whether it was from Sokoto, Tambuwa, Jega, Ilorin, Jeba, Lagos, Ibadan, Lagos, Badagry, mention it, East-West Road. So governors felt the need to intervene on the understanding that they will be reimbursed. But pause there. You said, and you are right, that at the beginning of this interview, that there are 200,000 kilometers of roads across Nigeria, Federal government is responsible for only 35,000 kilometers. So the remaining roads out of 200,000 kilometers, 165,000 kilometers, belong to the states and local government. So there is a saying that you must remove the speck in your eye first, before the log in your eye, before you come and remove the speck in my own. Have the states done all their roads? One. Do they have the resources to do federal roads? I'm telling you of 200 billion roads. Many of them have started presenting their budgets now. 500 billion, 300 billion. If you look at it and break it down, the bulk of it, in the very best cases, you find 50-50 recurrent to capital. So those who are even able to present 500 billion naira budget, okay, let's say it's halfway, 250 billion. Can you put it on Lagos Ibadan? It's not enough to build Lagos Ibadan. So why are you struggling with a road you really can't finance?
Yeah,
but the point must be made.
Yeah.
It happened. I, as a governor, took on Lagos Ibadan Expressway, did about 20 kilometers of it before I left office, and there was understanding. So this president, now it's important to put all of this together. While all the states were fixing federal roads, what was federal government doing before Buhari? Where were they?
Good question.
So that's the time we took $12 billion, go pay creditor abroad. That's the time oil was selling for over $100 per barrel. Why didn't federal government fix its roads then? So this Buhari administration inherited those debts. And the president said, I will pay. So when people even say that we are the same with that umbrella organization, I say we are not the same.
The debts paid by the federal government, was it on the basis of the fact that the governors had actually delivered on the roads that they were to fix? They had actually fixed those roads?
They fixed them.
Okay.
So the first tranche was about 400 billion. The second tranche, I think, was about 100 and something billion. There's another tranche we're evaluating now for Yobe, Taraba, I think, and Kebbi states. And that's why you saw me going to Yobe at some time recently, because the president set up a committee which I chair to actually go and inspect and audit and see the process and the fiscal conditions. But the point must be made, when people are complaining, including the states and representatives of states that receive this money, that government is borrowing, this is part of the debt. This is part of the debt. We are borrowing to repay back what we inherited. Debt that was contracted from the previous administration. This part of the debt is almost $1 trillion. So, the other point I wish to make is that the president then said, okay, once I pay this one, leave my roads. Let me run at my own pace. You go and do your own roads.
Well, there is the burden for the governors if the roads within their states are not fixed. It becomes an election issue. It becomes a political issue.
It's also an election issue for the federal government. But look, listen. Okay, yes. So let's look at it this way. I've been a governor before, so I sympathize with the governors. I understand it. But really and truly, let's look at it. Federal roads are which roads? The roads that connect one state to another. So let us look at, in a state, ask yourself this logical question. How many people's livelihoods depend on crossing from one state to the other, as against those whose livelihoods depend from crossing from local government to local government?
Which is cheaper? Is it for the governors to fix the roads that are within their purview, or the
No.
federal
Before
roads?
we even go there, so that we can
let's
break it down.
Yes.
Let's break it down.
Yes.
So let us look at a typical example. An interstate road, Lagos to Ibadan. Okay? Ibadan to Lagos. That's my responsibility. But Yaba to Lagos Island, interlocal government road. Ikeja to Akowojo, local government road. Right? That's a state responsibility. Then from polling unit, ward to ward, that's a local government responsibility.
That are almost non-existent.
Well, you make the judgment. So let's look at it this way. In one state, what is the percentage of people whose livelihood depend on being able to cross from ward to ward and from local government to local government, as against going out of the state.
In other words, it's
Who are
wiser.
more?
In other words, it's
Who are
wiser.
more?
It's wiser for the governors to fix the roads.
Ah, you made
within
the conclusion.
their
Thank
purview.
you for the conclusion. That's the
what
logic.
you're saying.
But
okay, but is there,
as I
is
said,
there any, yeah.
I have a mandate now from my employer to say, face your road, tell the governors to leave the federal roads alone, unless they don't want a refund. But even then, they still have to build to some specifications.
But is there any kind of interface between yourself and the governors?
Oh yes, I meet with them.
Ironing out.
Thankfully to the Governors Forum as an institution and the chairman, Governor Fayemi, I interact with the Governors Forum very frequently. I interact with governors on an individual basis. A few weeks ago, I was in a meeting with Kanu, Niger, Kaduna, and the FCT minister over the Abuja-Kanu highway. The other day, I was in a meeting with about 16 of them over compensation issues. We're working together.
Has this point been made to the governors, to hands off federal roads?
It's been documented from the last administration, so it's not an issue anymore. I don't think it's an issue. So as I said,
so
maybe you are the one looking for the controversies where they don't
No,
exist.
absolutely not. Mine is to get clarity and clarifications. But how, I mean, you have barely 2 years to the end of your tenure as Minister for Works and Housing. On the issue
17 months.
17 months, yeah.
If I'm not removed.
Well, I doubt it very much. But how soon do you think this roads, you met a 50%,
just a little
roads
over 50%,
in good condition. What's the percentage you hope to leave?
Well, as I said, we're working on about 13,000 kilometers, and I've mentioned some of what has been completed fully, and there are many things that are also nearing completion, but you may not appreciate our own evaluation of completion because of the length of our roads. They are not municipal roads where it's 2 kilometers and you go and cut a tape. So let me use a road again that you're familiar with. I've told you, Lagos-Ibadan. So section 1 from Lagos to Shagamu is almost finished. So how was it built? We closed 5 or 10 kilometers, divert traffic to the other side and build it. When we reopen it back, that is finished.
What's the biggest challenge in fixing roads? Is it funding? Is it the material, the raw materials?
It
depends on roads of bitumen, for example.
Every road has some degree of funding challenge or the other, but they taper down. Then there are a lot of issues that the public doesn't see. Traffic management, for example. So let us look at the Abuja-Kanu Expressway. If you are coming from Kanu through Zaria, and from Zaria into Kaduna, much of that route is completed. Much of it, the uncompleted part, is making more rapid progress. The eye of the storm is Kaduna to Abuja. Why is that so?
Yes.
The traffic between Kaduna and Abuja on a daily basis is about 40,000 vehicles every day. So you have to do a lot of traffic management, and that is the most populated part of the road. So there's a lot of truck terminals, settlement, markets, a lot of unapproved structures have been set up. Because it's a largely habited site, you will find also a lot of utilities, cable, gas, pipeline, fiber optic, electricity poles. All of those have to be removed before work starts.
And the issue of compensation.
So relocation and compensation, those are the challenges. If you observe when you are driving between Zaria and Kanu, how often do you travel to see the next vehicle? But on the busy side, you see the vehicles flying literally past you. You see the same thing between Lagos and Shagamu, almost 50,000 vehicles per day. But after Shagamu towards Ibadan, the traffic thins out. You will see that it takes longer for you to see the next oncoming vehicle. So these are human challenges. I wish we could close the roads, but we can't. So we deserve every support, every commendation, every understanding for even building through that traffic. Then, of course, materials. In some places, we have to travel as far as 300 or 400 kilometers to get building materials, laterite, cross stones from quarry. So we don't have a different road to supply the material. It's the same road.
What's the percentage of materials that you have to import as against those that are
The biggest components are the things that Nigeria imports, diesel and bitumen.
Bitumen, that's surprising.
Yes, because we are
not
producing the finished product. We have the bitumen tar deposits, but we are not processing it. I'm working with the Ministry of Mines to see if we can get something going in that area. But those are the things we likely import, and those are part of the challenges also arising from the refinery, where we import petrol and petroleum products because we are not refining to capacity. So I think those are the things that are imported. Otherwise, and then of course some of the heavy equipment, bulldozers, construction equipment by the construction companies.
Finally, on the issue of roads, before we move on to other things, how soon will the East-West Road be ready? And of course the second Niger Bridge, which you mentioned earlier.
Okay, second Niger Bridge is my responsibility in this ministry. It will be ready next year. Give or take third quarter, hit and miss last quarter.
We should take you up on it.
Oh yeah.
All right, we'll
by
come back.
February 2022, we expect that the full length of the bridge should have been fully connected. You can walk across both lanes. So what is left is the connecting road from Owerri interchange, from Obosi area. And about 7 kilometers of that part, the last time I went, 2 kilometers has been completed. Sand filling has been completed. We're waiting for the soil to settle, and also from the Asaba side. So work is going on. I have no problem. East-West Road is not the mandate of the Ministry of Works and Housing. It used to be, but was taken out during the Jonathan era when the Ministry of Niger Delta was created. So it's now under the purview of Governor Godswill Akpabio, as it was before the Buhari administration. We didn't do that. We met it like that, and it's remained. But just for the record,
in tandem
for the record, let me just say that I have traveled the East-West Road, and 70% of it has been built. Let me say that for public record. So what is left are some parts that have failed, like the part going to the LMA petrochemical area, and some parts going towards Oron, which were not done. And those are the things that Governor Akpabio is working on with the support of the president to try and deal with. And we are providing collaborative support. In fact, we just approved, because we have to do valuation for some compensations. We have to move a petrol station because the alignment has been taken. So the Ministry of Niger Delta has to relocate a petrol station and some building. So we just concluded the valuation for the compensation, because our ministry has responsibility to advise them on land valuation. So I'm sure that some action will come in the dry weather.
Honorable Minister, we've been talking about roads. Let's move on to the other huge portfolio that you handle, housing. Let me start again with another seemingly controversial statement that you made recently on, you were advising the state governors to come up with laws to enforce the monthly rent regime. How is that possible? Because I recall, if my memory serves me right, when you were governor, I think you tried something similar.
We did it
didn't
with a
seem
measure.
to work.
It did work. It worked. In fact, we did it with a measure of success. And, you know, it's a self-enforcing law in Lagos State. So if you breach it, neither of you can go to court to get relief. The landlord who is out of pocket, or the tenant who is victimized by the landlord, because you will have signed an illegal contract. Now, the point is to strike a balance, and we struck that balance in Lagos. There are some places where 5 years rent is useful for business, corporations, commercial developers. So in places like Ikoyi, Apapa, Victoria Island, where people build office complexes for business continuity, sometimes you don't even want to be paying annually as a corporate tenant. whether for business or for your managing director or your directing staff. Those places, we exempted them. But in the places where the real people live, where there's residential accommodation for working class people, then you must intervene. It's a matter of conscience, really and truly. And if I was a parliamentarian at state level today, this is a matter that cuts across the people I represent in many parts of Nigeria. It must be something that tells me this is the heart of representation. I must seek to do something about it, because you just need to talk to people, small businesses, individual owners, when their rent is falling due. You see how crestfallen, how afraid, how unsure, how excluded, how marginalized they feel. And if we can do something about that, I wish we can. And fortunately and unfortunately, this is not a federal government responsibility, it's a state responsibility. Yeah. Rent control is something that I am passionate about. And I believe that it will have tremendous positive economic consequences for Nigeria. The day we can make rent payment converge with salary receipts. That's what happens around the world.
Now that's the problem, the salary receipts aspect of it. How many Nigerians actually have the kind of salary that can take care of the monthly rents as well as other bills?
So let's flip it back this way. Let's flip it back this way. Where do they find the 3 years rent in advance? They pay it.
Maybe they have time to.
No, they pay it somehow. So, but if you earn an income, whether you're a salaried person, whether you're a trader, you have to sell first. So when people ask you to go and bring monies you have not earned, come on. That's the sense. So whether it's a salary, whether you are a motorcycle driver, whether you're a taxi driver, you have to carry passengers first and get paid. So if we can converge your rent with the cycle of your income, we will have impacted the Nigerian economy in an unbelievable way. It will be mostly revolutionary, because you see, 3 years rent in advance, apart from the fact that it affects affordability, that's why you see a lot of empty houses. Apart from that, it puts pressure on people. Yeah. It makes them desperate. You are talking, you want to fight corruption. The man doesn't want to lose his roof, or the woman. And so sometimes, we seem to be acting tongue-in-cheek. So when that money comes out from somebody we know doesn't have it, and we accept it, the joke is on all of us.
Encouraging corruption?
No, the joke is on all of us if we don't ask questions. But you know what? It gets passed through the economy. You and I pay for it, eventually, some way or the other. So when we take this pain out, I'm sure Nigeria will be in a much better place.
But some,
and it's
people who operate
people
within the built-up system, for example, I've heard one or two respond and say, look, that's not possible for you to, legislate this.
It is possible.
That the only way government can actually achieve this is to build low-cost housing.
No, that's not the answer.
Build mass housing for the people, and then the people would have an alternative.
That is not the only answer. It is one of the many answers. Okay? But it's a matter of conscience. When all is said and done, when you aggregate all of the houses owned in the world by people and in Nigeria, who owns more? Is it government?
Does Nigeria have a housing deficit? Because I need to be clear that you are not being misquoted when you were quoted as saying that Nigeria doesn't have a housing deficit, there are many empty buildings and apartments everywhere.
People must listen. I just ask questions. First of all, when I took this office, I was confronted with a statement that Nigeria had a 17 million housing deficit. I asked people then that, all right, if it's 17 million, where? What's the basis? Nobody could show me a basis. So somebody said, oh, maybe it was from World Bank. I asked World Bank said no, it wasn't from them. So I asked the African Development Bank, who they pointed to, they said no, it wasn't from them. Where is this deficit coming from? Before I start using that deficit as a basis to set a target for myself, I must verify the foundations on which it stands. Otherwise, you are running a race to the impossible. There must be method to planning. So I didn't find it. But I finally found it, and I found out that it came from this ministry in 2012. It came in the preface to a policy document by the minister. I called the minister, one of my predecessors, and I asked that, look, you did this. He said, yes. What is the basis? He said, look, there was no basis. They just prepared that document for me, and under pressure I signed. I didn't cross-check. So the basis of the target we have adopted is out of the window. So now that it is out of the window, how do we get an accurate number? We will wait for the next census. Because I wasn't just interrogating it, I was putting a plan. So I worked with Population Commission to say, we want data on housing needs, ownership, rental in the next census. So we passed that to them. That census we hold in 2022. In spite of that.
If it holds, because the census is beginning to look like a mirage. Okay.
It will hold. In spite of that, we're not waiting for the census. So we've started some interventions about which I've spoken so many times. Pilot housing in 34 states. We are now in some places phase 2, phase 3. A total of over 5,000 housing units. There's an inherited pilot program, about 6,000 units that are inherited. We're trying to finish that as well, give you about 11,000. There are interventions for mortgage, for real estate development by Federal Mortgage Bank. That's about 25,000 units across the country. And Federal Housing Authority is also building and developing on its own and in partnership in many parts of the country. But more importantly, this is going to be an all-of-government action if you want us to go deeper into housing.
Yes.
Because it is not just a federal problem, it's a national responsibility and concern. So the state governments, who incidentally control the most important resource, land. Federal government doesn't own land unless what the state gives them. State governments too have a role to play. And I must say, they are playing. But what excites me most, and that is why there should be no panic, the private sector has really committed in the last 6 years to housing development. I'm sure.
But that seems to service the high end.
Just wait. I think it's, you see, we must measure progress first. Okay. There is a lot of private sector intervention. I'm sure you ask your what is it called, your advert manager in Arise TV, how many adverts, commercials you now run. So advertising housing solutions, and that is where it should end inevitably, because that is when we will see more output.
Let's touch on the larger picture, the state of the nation. On the issue of security, the economy, banditry, secessionist tendencies, the politics, and all of that. What's your take? When you wake up in the morning, do you feel satisfied about where Nigeria is as a nation?
I'm the wrong person to ask, first because I don't manage security. Secondly, I manage a subset of and I know that infrastructure has some correlation to play, both in security and in the development of the economy. So when I wake up in the morning, I wake up with the resolve to go and give my best, leave nothing behind, leave everything in the office, and come back home, get enough rest, and go again tomorrow. So that's it. I know that we are facing some challenging times as a nation, but I am convinced that this is a phase in our history that will pass quicker and sooner than we think. And there are perhaps things that were waiting to happen, and they have happened. And I hope that in the choices that we make, we overcome them and learn from them to ensure that they do not repeat themselves. What is important is not problems, what is important is how we approach them in a way that problems don't define us. We solve them by interacting with one another. And that's why I keep telling people, you can criticize this administration all you like. That's your right. But don't vilify your nation. Don't destroy the Nigerian brand and the Nigerian reputation.
And that seems to be the problem. Because so, a number of people,
and there's a difference. There's a difference between Nigeria as a corporate entity and the government. There's a difference. Mm-hmm. So there's a brand, and all of us own that brand, irrespective of our political leanings. And that brand is the green, white, green, the identity of all of us Nigerians. And I appeal to all citizens. I don't see, there's no nation without problems. But people don't go putting down their country because it has a problem. I don't see it. I don't know how we got here, but I am appealing that we should quickly retrace our steps from this.
Well, we must continue. How can that really happen? You know, there seems to be this sense of being left behind, that some people have decided, look, we might as well no longer be part of the Nigerian project. And when you talk about, well, you hope to give it your best and all of that, can you do that without being president? I know you've said the presidency is being overrated.
It is overrated. You see, look, everybody has a role to play. You see, look, president is only one man. So with all the best intentions, he can't be in every place. But you know what? You are the Eze of one place, the Mali of Wali of one place, Galadima of this, the Ashwaju and Otumba and Osioba and Iya of this and that place. Those are leadership responsibilities across Nigeria. Obong, this, Eze 1 and 2 of that. Those are leadership responsibilities. You're leaders of those communities. What are you doing? Those leaderships are not to glorify your self-ego. They're responsibilities.
Yeah.
So all of us have roles to play.
Great point, but
So it's not waiting for one president, somebody with a magic wand. It's not going to happen.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Ashwaju, and it just brought the one Ashwaju that we all know.
I speak of Ashwaju as a title,
I understand
in the same way I can speak of Olorogun and all of that.
I understand that, but it just brought him to my mind as we have this discussion. Recently, he just came back from the UK, having undergone health treatment and all of that. So many visits to him, but people were expecting that you would visit him. They didn't see you, or maybe the vice president too. Why?
I was in touch with him.
Okay. Now, speaking of which, he plans to be president, and your name has also come up among those who should be president, as well as the name of the vice president, Yemi Osinbajo. What are your thoughts on the idea of leading this country come 2023?
I think that Nigerians should stop busying themselves about speculating about who should be president and who should not be president. It's too serious an office. It's not just the title and the ceremony. It's a very, very serious responsibility. And all too often, one of the things I've seen, is let's go and get this person, let's go and get that person. But truth be told, there are people who want to do this job.
Yeah.
And those are the people we should be talking to. Oftentimes, all we always do is give it to the people who didn't want it. And then they will say there are people who asked them to come and do it.
Don't you want it?
No, and Chief Obafemi Awolowo wanted it. We didn't give him. So I want to see people who want to do the job. So let's talk to them and say, wait, what qualifies you? Let's stop this, this person is this, that. It's like we are looking at one village or rural. This is very, very serious work. Very, very serious work. Who wants to undertake that work? I think that's where the focus should shift to. I am undertaking my shift right now, and it's time consuming enough for me.
Where can we find these people? Is it in the north? Is it in the south?
They are all across Nigeria.
Is it in the southeast? Is it in the
They are all across Nigeria, Ngozi.
Or are we wasting our time talking about the issue of zoning? Is it doing us?
Well, I'm not going to say any more than I've said about zoning. it's a matter of agreement. When you juxtapose the Constitution and the political manifestos together, you will see the answer there. So I'm not going to dissipate any more time about zoning than is necessary at the end of the day, right? And as I said, it's overrated, but even then, it has its own serious responsibilities. Let us face the subnationals. How many times are the people you elected to represent us staying around us? How many times do you see them? What is their capacity? Look, the typical setting I give across the whole world, okay? There's disaster, flood, people die. What do presidents and prime ministers do? They take helicopter, go and visit the governor or the mayor, shake hands, photo up. If he's lucky, they give him some money to help him. But the people who need shelter, who need food, who need water, who need medicine, whose problem are they? The subnational head. That's where we should focus. That's where the real capacity is needed.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. But on the issue of subnationals, they seem to be adding or widening the fault lines in Nigeria. I'm talking about the southern governors, for example, who sat together and decided they wanted an end to open grazing, which seemed to have divided Nigeria along north and south, southern lines, if you like. What's your take on that?
Ngozi, I'm not going to give you a sound bite. You see,
okay.
I don't look for devils. I look for angels. So if they have disagreements, they will come together. You will see that all of them are from crisscrossing political divides. In this season, you will expect to see a lot of saber rattling, but at the end of the day, things will sort themselves out. The governors know, and some of them I speak to, I said, look, who is going to be the leader in the park? Who is going to wear the trousers and bring everybody across, bring everybody together? You can't draw an imaginary line in the sand and refuse to cross. And they assure me that, look, listen, it won't happen. That what we see is not what's happening. They're working together. So don't look for any crisis there as well.
Okay, great. But for you, does it matter where the president comes from? Whether north, south, or wherever?
Really and truly, again, I'm going to retain my thoughts that I think that the presidency is overrated in terms of the expectations we have of the president. I'm going to be giving a speech very soon, and I'm going to be addressing this matter in some more detail, working with the Constitution. Some of the things that affect the ordinary people of Nigeria: water supply, refuse management, basic education, basic health care, municipal transport. They are not the responsibility of the federal government, and certainly not that of the president. Moving your refuse and those kind of things, operating markets and businesses, they are not the responsibility of a president. It's not in the Constitution for him to do. And so people who are going to vote in the expectation that the president will impact those places must think again. They must ask their governors and their governorship candidates those questions.
What kind of questions should they be asking?
Well, at the right time, you see, we will come to those conversations, and those are some of the questions I'll be addressing in the speech I hope that I'll be able to put together. But and I don't dismiss the importance of the office of the president, so don't misunderstand or quote me. The sovereign power, you see, when presidents, prime ministers, heads of government actually meet across the world, what are they projecting? They are projecting the aggregate of their subnational capacities. The aggregate of their subnational capacities, not the aggregate of their federal capacities. So when you are talking of countries who manufacture this, made in that, this type of food, that type of food, this type of technology, they are made somewhere in small parts of their country. That's what they project. That's why you see when presidents are going across to business meetings, they're taking leaders from the component parts.
Yes.
And they are using their sovereign might to say, do business with us. Buy what we sell. Buy what we make.
Great. On a final note, for some reason, you found yourself right smack in the middle of the whole NSAS protest, 5 days after the 20 the October 20 events, you found this mystery camera. And a lot of people have been wondering exactly what has happened even to that.
You shouldn't be
camera.
asking me. You have the tapes, which
Yes.
show that I handed it over to the government in Lagos right there and then. So you have all the recordings. I think your people were there. So don't ask me what happened to the camera. I don't know.
But what are your thoughts? I mean, we've only just marked 1 year of that event. What are your thoughts about youth, the Nigerian youth, and their readiness, or the display of seeming readiness to take over the helm of affairs?
You see,
Or to take a stand?
again, people should go back to history. People should go back to history. And I hope that the youth will not allow themselves to become, what is the right word? And I want to choose my words very carefully, to become a pawn in the game of power. When you go back into Nigeria's history, I saw you interviewing President Babangida recently. He turned 80. He took office at 1985. So if you deduct, he must have taken office at about 44, 45.
Yes.
President of Nigeria. So that was youthful. President Buhari became president of Nigeria, military head of state, at what age?
Also in his
40-something. President Obasanjo became first president in 1976 at what age? 30-something.
Gowon was 29.
So the history of Nigeria has been a history of youth leadership.
So what has gone wrong?
Nothing has gone wrong. I became governor at 44. I was younger. So nothing has gone wrong. So if you go through history, you will see that it is young people that have led Nigeria all through.
So why are they not being allowed now when they show interest? They are
Maybe
told
they haven't left the
not-
stage. They are still running.
I'm not
Maybe
sure.
they haven't left the stage. Those young people have retained. Look, we did an analysis recently. In 1999, I think about 20 or so governors were in their 40s or under 40. Is that not youthful enough? Governor of a state.
Have they given a good account of
That's
themselves?
you decide. Let the public and the people who elected them decide. But that's why I'm saying that the youth must be careful not to become
A pawn?
a pawn. You see, because don't you know I was taught in my early law practice, don't put in context into contest what is already assumed in your favor. It was always the youth who led Nigeria. They shouldn't put that in context now, because they'll be giving away what they already have.
And that's a good place to leave it. Thank you so much, Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola, the Honorable Minister for Works and Housing. It's been a delight talking with you. Join us again next time. I am Ngozi Alebu.